All these years, most of us thought the Alabama River was just a nice place to take a 2-hour cruise on the General Richard Montgomery. But then, the Bass Angler Sportsman Society brought Merle Haggard and 42 pretty fair bass fishermen to town, and the old Alabama will never be the same. For 5 straight mornings, 2 practice days, and 3 days of competition, 42 bass boats blasted off from the Powder Magazine landing with the state capitol in the background. During the 3 days of official competition, 207 black and spotted bass, 14 inches and longer, were weighed in at the Montgomery Civic Center. 15 of them were caught by a 21-year-old Fitzgerald, Georgia boy named Stanley Mitchell. Those 15 bass weighed 35 pounds, 2 ounces, and were worth $41,500, plus untold future earnings which accrued to a man who can lay claim to the title of Bassmasters Classic Champion. The idea of bassing for profit as well as for fun sprang from the supercharged brain of Ray Scott 14 years ago. The Montgomery native left a successful insurance business to create the Bass Anglers Sportsman Society and a series of annual bass tournaments climaxed by the Classic, which brings the year's top qualifiers together for a big, all-expense-paid fish-off worth a total of $100,000.
There was an interest out there in professional fishing that I knew was there, and when I started the first tournament, I saw these men come from around the country exhibiting their skills and willing to pay money to come. And from that start, it gradually grew over the years till now. We've got the Classic and have had it for the last 11 years, and it's become a real hallmark in sporting events. And I think the greatest testimony to the thing is a public interest in it. It's incredible to see. We have all day and all night last night cars coming in here from all over the country, carloads and truckloads and pickup truckloads of people just to see this Classic. And it's great to have them in Montgomery, and it's a thrill to me to have the Classic here.
To give every contestant an equal shot at that $40,000 top prize, the Classic provides identically outfitted bass rigs. Tom Ellis is in charge of that.
These Ranger boats are equipped with 150 horse Mercuries, every one of them. We have 42 fishermen, 42 identical boats, and they're all just alike. There's no difference in them except the number on the windshield. The boats are run between 58 and 60 miles an hour at top end, and they're all trailered on a Ranger Trail trailer, which are exactly alike. The boats were brought in here by Ranger, and they retail for approximately $15,000. Once we're through with the boats, after the tournament, they'll be for sale to the public at a reduced rate.
Bringing the classic home to BASS headquarters meant bringing it to untested Lake Montgomery, a 70-mile section of the Alabama River. Granted, there was some doubt in the minds of some qualifiers, but not in the mind of longtime bass pro John Powell. Powell, who helped blaze the trail of pro bass fishing, knows that river as well as any man.
Well, actually, there are two lakes out there in my mind. The one that existed before they built Jones Bluff Lock and Dam, and the one that existed before they built the canal bypassing Wetumpka. In the old days, you know, you didn't have that many fishermen out there, and you could just go where you wanted to on the Alabama River and just catch whatever fish you wanted to catch. If you wanted to catch a big largemouth, you came down this area. If you wanted to catch big spotted bass, you went up the Wetumpka North, and it was just, you know, it was a fantastic fishing hole that I didn't really want to talk about, you know, 4 or 5 years ago.
Isn't that the reason nobody really knew about
That's
it?
right, that's right. There were only 8 or 10 of us that were born and raised around this area that were out there really having fun bass fishing all the way back as 1935, and it was sort of our river. And we certainly didn't talk to strangers, you know. This is something that came about in just the last few years.
What's going to happen now?
Well, I'll tell you, a heap of people have found it. Not only the people that are in the tournament are going to come back, but the people that, you know, we've got 40 or 50 or maybe 100 boats, visitors out there today. And they're watching the pros and they're finding the fish. So we're going to have a new little enterprise here of the Alabama River or Lake Montgomery or Jones Bluff or whatever you want to call it. It's going to have more fishing pressure now than it ever had in its history. Of course, that's good for the industry.
You're going to like it, and in a way, you're not going to like it.
Well, yes, there's two of me. The one is the commercial side of me, and the other is a fisherman's side that, you know, likes to go out. But there's one thing about this river. You can get out there and fish all year long without the too many skiers and big boats washing you ashore. You can hide up the creeks or you can go up the canal. So it's still sort of an out-of-the-way place for big boaters. You can get, for bass fishing, you can get out there and be alone. But I'm sure now we're going to see a few more boats than we have seen in the past, which that's good. That's really good. It's good for us as sportsmen, and it's good for the industry.
In a country that idolizes pro athletes, relatively little is known about the professional bass fisherman. Bob Cobb, editor of Bassmaster magazine, knows.
There was a time when they thought the average bass pro was a guy with a dream and a week off and $300, but now you'd come up with a person that's not only a fisherman, he's an athlete, he's a businessman, he's a PR man, and he's ambitious. Some people do make a living at bass fishing.
Some don't. What do they do?
Those people that fish tournaments, they're the life's blood of the tournament trail. They're avid sportsmen, they're average working people, and they'll plan a vacation or a week off from work. They'll scrape together their entry fee and they'll come out and compete. Some of those people have made it on the tournament trail. They're the people that support the 30 or 40 professional fishermen that do work for a living and do fish. But tournament fishing, it's still in the embroil stage. It's a little over 13 years old. Serious tournament fishing. This is the 11th Classic. I'd say it's only in the last 5 or 6 years that the manufacturers and the sponsors have started to respond to the possible marketing concept of using these fishermen to help sell their products. A fisherman that can win 3 or 4 tournaments in his career, get hot, place well in the Classic. If he wins the Classic, the press media brings immediate attention to him. He becomes a marketable item. A man that doesn't win, he comes and enjoys it for just the sport.
As usual, most of the superstars of bass fishing were here. Roland Martin, the greatest of them all, but strangely, never a Classic winner. Bo Dowden, steady and strong, back to defend the championship he won at Thousand Islands, New York. Rick Clunn, a fishing genius, winner of 2 Classics. Bobby Murray, winner of that first Classic in 1971. Hank Parker, the 1979 champion. Tommy Martin, he won in 1974. Jimmy Houston, whose syndicated fishing show is seen in all 50 states. Jimmy showed the personality and quick wit that has made him so famous, despite a poor week of fishing.
I ran out of gas on the trailer. They're supposed to fill our boat up, and right off the bat, before I left the motel this morning, I had a backlash in the toilet paper, so I knew that, that it was going to be a fairly tough day, and then my boat didn't have any gas in it, and I got to fish with Bill Tippett. I don't know if y'all seen Bill Tippett.
Went from Montgomery to Dallas for a fishing party.
Yeah, and Bill weighs 900 pounds, and my boat run down the lake this way all day long, you know.
They were all here, but for all their years of experience, their well-earned reputations, only one would make the top 10, only two the top 20. With the two-day practice period over, Thursday, day one of the three-day competition dawned slightly overcast and only slightly cool. Defending champ Bo Dowden roared off in the first flight, headed for a spot 25 minutes downriver, a ledge he discovered in the main river on an earlier trip. Bo found his fish. The only problem, they weren't long enough. Time after time, Bo's crankbait did the job, but they were 12 or 13 inchers, not the required 14-inch length. Bo may have ruined his chances by spending most of the morning on this spot. He would later say it was a big mistake. A bit further down in Swift Creek, Rick Clunn was working the old creek channel. This one was long enough, but no gills. Weigh-in time was our first encounter with the 21-year-old Georgia boy, a logger by trade, and some kind of fisherman. Stanley Mitchell weighed in 7 keepers on day one, 15 pounds, 5 ounces. Jack Chancellor of Phoenix City, Alabama, had the limit too. He stood second after opening day, nearly 3 pounds below Mitchell's lead. Both were elated.
All the fish I was catching are small. I went to looking for some bigger fish. I lost a big fish a couple of days ago in practice in a treetop, and I went and tried to catch him, but I couldn't catch him. He's a real big fish, probably 7 or 8 pounds. But I'm going to try to get him tomorrow, too.
I've got about 6, 7 different places on one pattern that's holding up real good right now. I just hope they stay there the next 2 days.
Did you catch a lot of fish? Did you get to call some?
Well, no, I just caught 7 keepers, but I caught about 10 or 15 more that wasn't keepers. It was, you know, anywhere from 12 to 13 inches, but they just wouldn't make 14 inches.
Think you can limit again tomorrow?
I just don't know. It's according to fish move. If they don't move, I can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Day two, and the clouds went away. So did some of the fish. None of the contenders would catch more than 4 keepers, but it would be a day for 2 veterans to make a move. Harold Allen of Batesville, Mississippi, a former guide on Toledo Bend, brought in 4 fish, but a total of 8 pounds, 3 ounces to move past Chancellor into second place and to trail Stanley now by just 3 pounds.
It's a confined little area, and there's a few fish in there. They got beat pretty hard today, and the water got stirred up real bad. There's a bunch of boats in there, but I think if I can get in there early, I can scratch me out 3 or 4 more, and then maybe go to some other places that I've been saving, you know.
The other charge was mounted by 2-time champ Rick Clunn. 3 bass, but one of them a 5-pounder. 8 pounds, 11 ounces altogether. 5 pounds off the pace, but for a man of Clunn's skills, very much in the hunt.
No, there will be very few fish caught tomorrow. Somebody's going to have to do what I do. They're going to have a big fish with 2 or 3 others, and they'll win it. But they got to have 1 big fish in there. Yeah, that's going to be the make or break to the winner here. There's going to be a lot of upset stomachs between now and tomorrow morning.
The youthful leader managed just 6 pounds, 11 ounces on day 2. and he knew what he had to do.
You concerned at all about what's happening out there with the other contestants? Yes.
Did they move on you, Stan?
I don't think so. I think they're just not hitting.
You felt the fish were there.
I still feel they're there.
When you catch your fish today?
Oh, I caught the last one at 2 o'clock.
So they're a bit later today than they did.
Well, I had one at 11, and then I caught 3 more from 11 to 2.
Getting nervous?
A little bit.
That first 4 hours is kind of tough there.
Yes, it was. I was scared I was just going to have that one.
Well, you know, just catching fish now is the important thing. You just got to bring in a few, huh?
Yeah, sure. I got to do well again tomorrow.
A red sky greeted the onshore early risers for the final day. As the boats were launched for that final time, it was quite obvious the winner would come from the top 4, Mitchell, Allen, Chancellor, or Clunn, separated by no more than 5 pounds of fish. One big one, as Rick Clunn had so prophetically said the day before. All went downriver, the long boat ride affording them one more chance to rethink the final day's battle plan. The youthful Stanley Mitchell had long decided to stay with his normal pattern, even though he'd lost some ground the day before. He would continue to pull his Model A bomber crankbait off the shallow points of branches and creeks, hoping for the big ones to hit it when the bait reached the deeper water of the old creek channel. Harold Allen had decided that if he died, it would be up Catoma Creek, working the same 1-mile stretch that he'd been on the past 2 days, because by now he knew the old creek channel well enough to effectively work the cover along the edges with his gator tail plastic worm. Jack Chancellor, the Alabama Hope, would continue to fish the river with his South Carolina rigged worm, floating the worm off the bottom with a 4-foot leader. It worked well enough to make him the only fisherman to catch the limit twice. Rick Clunn, the most experienced of the 4, made the biggest mistake. Listening to the locals, he believed the power company would not generate on Saturday, the final day. He elected then to move into the branches and creeks with his buzzbait, staying out of the main channel. He would catch only 2 keepers, while Stanley Mitchell was reaping the benefits of the increased current in the big river. Just after he arrived at his honey hole, Stanley caught a 4-pounder. He was on his way. At times, Stan would bump a jig and spoon along the bottom, but later said 70% of his fish were caught on his faithful crankbait. As they all do, he missed an occasional keeper. Still, for a 21-year-old, he was remarkably calm with $41,000 on the line. Last year's champion, Bo Dowden, rolled by, no more than a spectator at this point. Bo would end up with just 5 bass for the tournament and a 25th place finish. The only man to intrude on the Big Four's private battle on the last day was George Cochran. This whopper would propel him from 37th to a respectable 17th place finish worth $1,000, plus another $1,000 for the tournament's biggest bass. The Montgomery Civic Center was packed for the 3 o'clock weigh-in. By now, Stanley Mitchell's battle to become the first ever wire-to-wire winner, to say nothing of the youngest ever, had captured the hearts of most of the 4,000 spectators. It was Harold Allen's time to weigh in early this day, and the former Toledo Bend fishing guide's vow to live or die up Catoma Creek was looking good. The second biggest catch of the tournament, 6 bass, 15 pounds, 3 ounces, 3-day total of 34 pounds, 3 ounces. Stanley Mitchell would have to have 12 pounds, 4 ounces, nearly double his second-day catch to beat Harold Allen. The tension mounted as Jack Chancellor brought in his second limit of the tournament. His 17 fish was more than any other contestant. He would finish third and take $6,000 back to his Phoenix City, Alabama home. At last, it was Stanley Mitchell's time to weigh in. He had 2 big fish, the last caught at 1:48 in the afternoon, just an hour before quitting time. It took him 4 minutes to land the big bass. But he could not be sure if it was enough. He knew Allen was in with a big catch. He knew he needed 12 pounds, 4 ounces. He knew it would be close, one way or the other. Carefully, Tournament Director Harold Sharp placed Stanley's 4 keepers on the electronic weighing machine.
When did you catch the first one this morning? What were you using?
I caught him about 5 minutes after we started, and I caught him on a crankbait, about a 4-pounder.
What about the big one?
Caught him at, my press partner said 158 on a crankbait.
Did you do anything different this time than you did the first and second day?
No, sir, I stuck with the same game plan. I fished the same way all 3 days.
What way was that? How did you fish this place?
I fished the old sandbars where the old river channel used to be. It flooded, and the water was about 5 foot deep on top of the riverbank, and I was fishing, pulling it off the top of the riverbank, pulling the crankbait off and pulling them off, and when it come off the old riverbank, that's when they'd hit it.
Mm-hmm. What were you thinking about when you left this morning?
Just catching fish.
You'd think that Stanley Mitchell would be, as they say, keeping his options open now. The $41,150 propels Stanley from 174th to 12th on the career money-winning lists. Obviously, there'll be other checks in the months to come with endorsements and appearances. But right now, Stanley plans to continue his logging contracting business. His plan is to fish only 4 tournaments in 1982 before returning to defend his classic title. And did you ever wonder what happened to the fish? 206 of the 207 bass caught were returned alive to the Alabama River under the care of the Fisheries Division of the State Conservation Department. Incidentally, that old big one there is the 6-pound, 10-ounce bass caught by George Cochran, the largest of the tournament. They'll never believe his story when he gets back to Swift Creek. One last observation. Having seen 5 of these classics now, this is the first one to become a real spectator event. Those 4,000 fans on the final day were right in the battle with Stanley Mitchell. The huge press corps will return home to write glowing accounts of bass fishing in Alabama and hospitality in Montgomery. We'll all be better off because of it.